Mm-hmm.
How many butt plugs?
I can't believe I said that one time. I've said a lot of things. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to NBA Deeper Dive presented by Stokastic. I'm Eric Lindquist. We are here at the Stokastic YouTube channel. You can follow me over at Eric Lindquist over on X. You can follow my friend Chris Spags, not only over on X, but also on the YouTubes himself, doing a great NBA breakdown, splash play in NBA form. You should be checking that out every single Monday through Friday before this program. But Spags, it's always good to see you, my dude.
No, thank you. Yeah, I wore my special gold hat today because Eric was going to be here. I was so excited to see. I didn't know in advance. I was watching Josh's strategy show, and I'm like, here's Josh doing the plug where he's like, I'm going to do the show at Spags. And it's like, oh, Eric Lindquist and Spags. I'm like, that's exciting because I think Josh is getting his puppy, and I'm getting my little puppy right here. Get this fella, this big puppy. You're like a Bernese mountain dog yourself.
Like a golden retriever meets another golden retriever. I had somebody break that down to me one time where they're just like what other dog would I be? Somebody in chat, if you put Rottweiler, I swear to God, I will freak out. But no, what do you have a dog? I thought you had a dog.
I had two dogs. Fortunately, had to get put down.
Okay.
We had the 14-year-old who just started to get like shaky and stuff, couldn't move around that much. Bummer, but she was a hound pit mix, had a yellow lab too, who got like they get cancer pretty easy as a downside if we're talking sad dog stuff. But yeah, dogs are the best. We're gonna probably get one again in the spring, start the cycle over again. But oof.
The Luca pictures with the pup, that's gonna be like, oh, you're just gonna explode over on X.
Oh yeah, that's what we're hoping. We're just really trying to clout chase with everything we do here with the child and living the dream here. We'll see.
Hey man, whatever it takes. I'll throw some Amazon links together. You can sign up for the dog collar that he has, the affiliate links. 'Tis the season, everybody. 2 weeks until Christmas. That means I should probably buy some stuff, huh? That'd probably be good. Should buy.
I'm ahead. I got everything for my wife, Luca. We did kind of combined shopping for us. We figured that out. I'm actually ahead of the 8 ball for like the first time ever with this. I don't know how that happened.
Well, I'll buy Puppet Lindquist some new clothes. That'll be my contribution first thing. Not yet. Not really. Right off the bat.
He's here. I just want to show that he's here.
No.
He doesn't have any festive attire on, unfortunately.
Hey, we got to get 400 likes before he comes into play because Puppet Lindquist, this isn't just something. It's not a dance monkey dance situation. He's not actual Eric Lindquist where you could hit the like button one time and I'll do whatever you tell me to. But yeah, 400 likes. We can have Puppet Lindquist show up here at the end of this show. That's for sure. But suppose we should probably talk a little bit of basketball. First off, what'd you think about the games yesterday? Because I frickin' fell asleep on the couch.
I enjoyed the outcomes of it. I had called the Luca being shut down relatively thing. I know you had some bets in favor of him. I'm sorry we didn't talk in advance, so I could have gotten you on the right track with that. But I had a lot of stuff right. The Bobby Portis play out of nowhere for DFS wise was not the most helpful. I'm in a few lineups I had in the 4-point play, but didn't get him in the big tournament, so that kind of bummed me out. But yeah, honestly, I enjoyed the games. I feel like the NBA Cup, I get why it's suffering ratings wise, just kind of an overextension of everything brand wise. People don't enjoy the jerseys being different, the courts being different, the Bucks courts blue. It's confusing, but good basketball. Teams trying, SGA putting teams on his back. I think it's always fun to see as well. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to these games today, but I don't hate the NBA Cup. I feel like people do out there. It makes me sad.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to Vegas and hopefully having a better show than what we had last year. I mean, the Pacers, Lakers, I mean, those games were terrible last year. Hopefully we can get a better brand of basketball showing up there. But leading into it, I thought the NBA Cup was pretty decent last year. It's just weird having these like one game in the location. And as you said before, a blue court in Milwaukee with Orlando on the other side was just weird to me. But I don't know. These are nitpicky things, I suppose. It is what it is. The NBA is trying different things. We can't be too upset, and we still get a DFS slate. So you ready to start breaking this one down?
Yeah, let's do it. Data hasn't moved in 5 hours with all the Q-Tag guys, so it's great. I've been set to go for the most of the day.
Yeah, let's set the stage right off the bat. Atlanta at New York in the Garden. That makes it fun for the NBA Cup. 8-point favorites, kind of the average you're looking at here for the Knicks. 237 total. We have two massive Q-Tags in those starting lineups. Jalen Johnson on the Atlanta side. On the Knicks side, Josh Hart. You had Karl Anthony Towns already ruled in. And as you said before, this is an interesting one where, I thought we were going to get like a questionable Karl Anthony Towns, and we might be talking through that in a situation. No, it's a questionable Josh Hart, which I think is the most interesting part of this entire slate, I suppose, because of late swap. We have Şengün, and I think they're all more likely to play than not. Do you have any kind of a lean on either of those two Q tags before we dive into the data?
Yeah, I've been assuming all day that all these guys were going to play. I feel like the cup does matter a little bit. Josh Hart himself has said that he's playing to buy himself an expensive watch. He doesn't care about the teammates. I'm sure doing a little bit of podcast bit, but like he's talked about wanting to win this. So I think all the guys are going to go, but seeing Josh Hart game time decision worries you a little bit. I honestly, some value opening up might be a positive at this point, especially with the late swap tool and how you'll be able to get to it pretty well. But I think all the guys go, and I think that feels like a safe assumption. I hope.
Yeah, I hope so too. But for the most part, starting on the Atlanta side, Jalen Johnson and Bogdan Bogdanovic, both Q tags, and both the most popular plays on the Atlanta side. If you get one or either of them out, or if you get either of them or both out, you're looking at massive value potentially with this Atlanta side that we know plays up in pace. And with the Knicks on the other side, very, very good. Number one in offensive rating this season in the NBA. Not there in the defensive rating department, and the pace should be moving, nearly a 240 total. But let's start on the expensive end with Trae Young here. Relative to the other spend ups, how does he project out for you? Because we're seeing the lowest points per game he's had since his rookie season and the most assists in the entire NBA and the highest mark north of 12 per game for his career, for this season so far.
Yeah, it's tough with Trae Young. I've had Jalen Johnson projected neck and neck with him pretty much every game this year for the most part, besides a few, I think, where Trae has had kind of advantageous spots. And it's something that's hard for me, too, because like I look at the Stokastic data, I do overlay my projections on top of Stokastics, and I'm about 0.8 lower, and as a result, I'm getting to 18% Trae compared to 24%. As you guys watch these shows, I mean, really, I don't think anybody on Stokastics content is like a narrative guy. If ever there were a guy to be narrative-y about, it would be Trae Young going to MSG. Like, he gets off on this a little bit. He's done WWE bits about how he owns the Garden. Like, this is legit a thing for him. So not getting him at least with the field doesn't feel right to me. I feel the same way about the other big point guard on the slate, Steph Curry. He looks low-owned. But point guards, sim-wise, I don't think are just as much of a pay-up option or much of a pay-up desire based on what I'm seeing. So I'm a little bit lower on him at 18%, but I do think he's one guy where it's 2-game slate. I want to at least be with the field on it. So I'll probably get to like 25% by the end of it all.
Yeah, 45.7% assist rate. Jalen Johnson's at 21.7. The projection, the reason that it's got the disparity it is Jalen Johnson's almost 10% better in terms of effective field goal percentage and nearly 10% better in terms of rebound rate. 14.5 for Jalen Johnson up against Trae Young's 5.8 here on the season. So it's definitely kind of a push and pull thing between the two of them. But positionality and price are two things that matter a lot in DFS. And that's where Jalen Johnson is the guy that I'm getting to the most on the Atlanta Hawks right now. Looking at the screen right now, looking at the Sims tool, which we'll talk about here throughout the program. And there are very easy, accessible ways to get it for free right now. We've got him right around a 31% optimal percentage, which hasn't changed in the last couple hours. If you get Bogdan Bogdanovic out, Jalen Johnson in, obviously I think that upgrades just about everybody down the line, including Jalen Johnson. But I mean, his PRA, every single time I look at it, 33.5, 34.5. The guy's just much better than people give him credit for. I feel like he's, comfortably in 45% of my lineups and not going to go anywhere no matter what, Spags.
Yeah, I think Jalen Johnson to me looks like a really strong play. He's also in 45% of my lineups right now. So I'm with that. Again, he's a player that I've had projected neck and neck with Trae Young. And I'll say too, like, I think there are two players in this game that have price tags that feel a little bit low for the DraftKings slate, where you have 8,300 for Jalen Johnson. Anything low 8Ks, I feel like we're in the sweet spot for him where he can put up 50 and you're getting the value return on that. And for Jalen Brunson on the other side, like, I've liked Karl-Anthony Towns so much more, but Brunson at 8,500, a nice price tag. These guys have ceilings that are comparable to the highest dollar, plays on the slate. So I think that Jalen Johnson has kind of a number of utilities where he can give you that full ceiling. He's also a little bit cheaper. He plays, power forward. So you're getting at least one position that doesn't have a ton of great plays on it out of the, things squared away right away. To me, Jalen Johnson, one of the best plays on the slate. So having him in half my lineups feels pretty good.
I'm very curious what we're going to talk about here next, because obviously Bogdanovic, if he ends up out, everybody's going to look better for these ancillary options. It's not going to change a lot of what I do with Trae Young and Jalen Johnson, but it'll certainly change what I do with a Dyson Daniels. It'll change what I do with a DeAndre Hunter. Currently mid-teens, low teens ownership coming in on them. We have the center spots that we'll talk about here next, but as we work down the pecking order, Bogdan Bogdanovic, if he ends up playing 4,900 with shooting guard, small forward, I completely get it, but I think that there's a couple of plays that I'm more interested in on the other side of this game, specifically Miles McBride and Josh Hart. We'll see how that injury tag works out, but I think out of the three questionable tags that exist in starting lineups today, Josh Hart is the one who's the most questionable. And Bogdanovich, they don't need him out on the floor in these kind of must-win spots. And DeAndre Hunter's been eating up more usage this season. His points prop sitting at 17.5 across the industry, taking on more of an offensive workload as Trae Young has reduced his usage ever so slightly and been more assist forward. So out of these next grouping of guys on Atlanta, who are you looking to get to the most?
Yeah, I'm with you on Bogdanovich. That said, I've been on shows, in the past couple of weeks where our pal Josh Engelman has mentioned, hey, Bogdanovich's price tag a little bit too low. He ends up going off at a couple games, like, pursuing that or following after Josh saying that. I would say for Bogdanovich, I've been lowing him throughout this entire time period. I'm not going to change that at this point with this price tag starting to come up. So I'm getting half the field of 14% of him. And I kind of like being around that mark for at least a few of these guys on the wing. Getting about 13% DeAndre Hunter. Like Eric mentioned, he is getting a good amount of work overall, 24% usage on the year, pretty big jump up for him. I would make him actually a higher usage guy than Jalen Johnson so far this year, which is kind of surprising to see for me. Producing about 1.03 fantasy points per minute. He's not a great play at that price tag. The price tag's coming up, but small forward, power forward, he definitely has a ceiling at a 28-minute projection or so. So DeAndre Hunter, I like getting an equal amount of Bogdanovich. Dyson Daniels, I can never just get to. It's tough. I haven't hit on any of his big games because I don't know if I don't project steals and blocks well enough with how he does that. He can put up numbers enough on those fronts any given night, but you have enough dudes to take usage away on the wing from him that he's kind of got to get there through things that are not just scoring, and I'd rather get guys who can get there through scoring. So low on Dyson Daniels, getting 9% of him, but at least some of it. A little bit lower on Hunter, but closer to the field, and I'm getting half on Bogdan and feeling pretty good about that.
Dyson Daniels is insane. I've got him for 3 steals like every game going out. He's averaging 3.2 per game. It's an up-tempo spot, and it's one where whether it's Josh Hart or Deuce McBride in the starting lineup in the event that Hart gets rolled out, you're looking at all guards that are handling all ball handling duties. I mean, Karl-Anthony Towns has been mixed in doing more in the assist department at times, but I mean, God, Dyson Daniels at 6,800. I'm always curious where he lands on a slate like this, like a 2-gamer specifically, because he's shooting guard only. And people feel very confident with these, shooting guard, small forwards punting off a lot of that. I'm just going to keep my eye on it here because he is definitely somebody that I think as we get closer to lock, if his ownership dips into like the 10, 11% territory, I could see myself artificially boosting him a little bit at 6,800. He feels kind of like a Bobby Portis price tag on this slate where it's somebody that, just doesn't look all that good, but we know that the upside is there in ways that are much more difficult to quantify. I mean, again, steals, blocks. I've got him for 4 of them today in all. 1 block, 3 steals. I mean, this is just an absurd guy on any slate with the single positionality to land on. That being said, any cash game format or like first lineup in, there's no chance I'm landing on him. Let's finish this out, though. Center, Onyeka Okongwu, been closing a lot more here for Clint Capella, and I'm very curious in a game that, carries a little bit more merit than your normal regular season game. What ends up happening? Because it feels like sometimes it's just a hot hand approach or a matchup approach. If Clint Capella is being ineffective or, they got blown out by 30 against Denver last time and Clint Capella had no answer for Jokic, most teams don't. We saw him relegated. There's $1,000 disparity between these two where, I mean, Capella could play 27, 28 minutes and Okongwu's 21 and there's not a ton of value there, but if Okongwu ends up closing like we've seen in a lot of these games, Spags, how do you feel about him at 4,700 on DraftKings? Because I think he's one of my favorite tournament options for this slate.
Okongwu, I actually, Eric, before the show, was talking to Jordan about this, giving him some hot takes for bets for Jordan to place. So you could tell it's coming for a place of genuine enthusiasm from Eric here. But I think in this spot, I like Okongwu a lot in tournament lineups lately. He's actually been in a few I've had that have not gotten all the way there, but have been top 1% lineups that felt like they were getting well or playing well because of guys like Okongwu. He's been producing well. Like he's even against the Bucks, like had a pretty decent fantasy day. So not that matchup matters as much as it used to, but I think for Okongwu, I'd be willing to take the shot more. I'm not getting either guy that much though. Getting 6% Okongwu, a little bit over 1% Capella. I think the price tags don't look great for these guys. I'll say the one difference, and I think this applies for Dyson Daniels as much as it does Capella and Okongwu. Like comparing them to Portis yesterday, like Portis was kind of at a lower price point where he'd fall into the mid 5Ks. At least that's down a little bit for him. I think being price sensitive about it. Whereas like Capella's kind of priced where he's been, Okongwu's priced where he's been for guys that are straight splitting minutes. Like I don't know, I don't feel like there's crazy value on it. But that said, one of the value plays in the slate you're going to get a lot of is Kevon Looney. So obviously we'll get there later. Relative to Kevon Looney, these guys have comparable ceiling, probably a better floor. So I think there's probably merit to him, but projection wise, I don't know how you really get there unless you're just kind of boosting them and going out of pocket a little bit.
I'm just going to ask you this because it's uncomfortable, but do you think there's any chance Larry Nance gets mixed in whatsoever today? Like, I don't want to play Larry Nance at 3,800, but he played 24 minutes after not playing for nearly a month. It was like a 24-day gap between games played. They dusted him off for 24 minutes against Denver. I think that was mostly due to blowout, but he played well. There are questions. There's whisperings, if you will, if you watch the NBA Twitter kind of go through the NBA X, I suppose. Clint Capella and expiring, Larry Nance and expiring potentially to get moved, have some value there. I don't know. It'd be the one thing that keeps me from wanting to like jam a Kongwu on this slate if Looney's going to pull all the ownership, because Golden State, I think the rug can get pulled a lot more than it can on the Atlanta side. But I don't know. Do you think Larry Nance plays at all today?
I don't think he does, but look, there could be random spikes. I think if the offense completely sputters, then that's one way that Larry Nance sees the court, because he at least adds some value. He's going to be productive out there. He's going to rebound. He's going to get up probably some bad threes, but he's going to try to kind of move the ball around and play functional basketball overall. He doesn't add a ton of value to the rotation. I think against Cat too, like what is Nance going to do for you? He's going to get eaten alive in that kind of situation. So I would not play Nance here. Stokastic has him today for no minutes. I'm looking at a 2-game slate. I think Eric thinking like that, like that's tournament brain you're looking for generally. But I think it's a little bit tougher. And Okongwu and Capella are low owned enough that I don't need to make the pivot like on the pivot.
Guys, I'm aware Jalen Johnson was out. I'm just asking. He played very, very well. He was the only guy from Atlanta who played well in that game. 16, 4, and 3 in 24 minutes. He can get things done from a fantasy perspective and really kind of tarnish any value if he were to get dusted off, even for like 6, 8 minutes. So it's something to be thinking about. And on 2-game slates, every piece of news matters. I think we talked about that a little bit yesterday, Greg and I, on Live Before Lock, which, by the way, will be fired up here in 25 minutes when we turn it over. But let's get over to the New York Knicks side, because this is definitely a fascinating one. Karl-Anthony Towns, good to be in here. Josh Hart, he is sitting there questionable. And I ran some rates with Josh Hart off the floor. It is astounding to look at the assist rate for Jalen Brunson. 45% assist rate so far this season in 154 minutes, 33.4% usage. In the event that Josh Hart gets ruled out, he's going to be somebody that goes way, way up. 1.48 DraftKings points per minute. Cam Payne would probably enter the realm of like a conversation point here, where he's been trusted by Tibbs a little bit more than I was expecting, had been playing pretty good basketball. And then Miles McBride, either off the bench or in that starting unit, would look like one of the best value plays. But assuming the Hart's in, who are some of your favorite plays to get to on the Knicks side?
So with Hart being in, I think that my favorite play has got to be Cat. I mean, it doesn't really matter that much for Hart being in or out for him. But Cat's a play for me where I think he's been underpriced for most of the year. We're now seeing him. If we're going to be price sensitive, he is towards the ceiling of where his price tag has been. But that said, projection wise, Stokastic has been 54.1. I'm at 54.3 on him. Looks like one of the best plays in the slate. So Cat to me being a priority play, 1.45 fantasy points a minute. He's got the highest ceiling. Well, that's not fair. He doesn't have the highest ceiling of everybody in the slate because we do have some point guards that could do well. Guys like Jalen Johnson even could hit it. But I do think for Towns in this matchup as well, just a really nice situation for him where I expect the floor and ceiling combo to be better than most. So he's my priority. The wings, Miles McBride, I'm already getting a ton of as it is. So I'm not sure how that would happen if we get Josh Hart out. McBride right now project for 33% ownership. I got double that because, as talked about before, there's really no value on the slate. You have Kevon Looney, McBride, just bench guys who are a little bit cheap. That works. If Hart's in, though, McBride's got to be, a 60% owned play. So I don't know how that would change the kind of the dynamics of that. McBride to me, Eric, I feel like is a play right now, like great now. And if Hart's somehow out, even better. The bad news is like you're not going to get any value out of that because we'll know Josh Hart before the slate starts.
Yeah, we'll know Josh Hart. We'll get that news right away here. And obviously Live Before Lock will be able to cover the complete implications of it. Of course, Precious Achiuwa is back too. And if you guys watched the Showdown show on Monday, that was kind of the guy that I flag planted. Ended up working out well. I nearly 4x'd my money, but finished like 11th in the $4 and $1. And you needed the 1-for-1 swap from Precious to Miles McBride. And it was kind of like equal in terms of train. You leave the salary on the table. It didn't get you anything completely different. Miles McBride was projected a little bit better, but Precious Achiuwa, with him back, I was paying attention to how they were going to stagger him and Karl-Anthony Towns. They made it more of a true stagger in that first quarter this time around, where Karl-Anthony Towns came out. You had Precious chime in there, and then, well, they barely saw the floor together at any point during that game. So I do think you're looking at Precious kind of like capped around 14, 16 minutes in most situations, unless he were to somehow start and they slide Mikal Bridges over, they slide OG Anunoby over, and they start Precious at the 4 next to Cat at the 5. I think that's pretty unlikely. I think they probably go to a McBride or a campaign before they go to Precious. But what else looks good to you on this bench outside of, if Josh Hart's out, we're all just jamming Miles McBride.
Yeah, Precious, I'm getting about 11%. I think we were talking about Precious and what you mentioned on the showdown slate. The fact he's just a good per minute producer overall, or at least a decent enough one, at about 0.86 fantasy points a minute so far in the year, but rebounding plus 20% clip. Like, he's doing pretty good work out there, so I could see him being a value play to go to. And frankly, I think the big thing is, like, if you saw Kevon Looney's minutes get squeezed, Precious Achiuwa can probably beat out Kevon Looney without taking up a center spot while costing you less money. So I think there is sort of a little bit of GPP value in going to Precious Achiuwa here. That said, projection-wise, he doesn't look that great. I would have him as about a 4.xx value, a 4.6x, value today. Got him 11% of my sim lineups. That's okay. I think if you want to juice him up a little bit and try to bump, well, probably would be more inclined to play him without Cat for the reasons that Eric mentioned, unless we got Achiuwa being a starter with Josh Hart out. But I think if you were to bump him up in lineups where you don't get Towns, and lineups where you don't play Looney, I think that would probably look the best, because I think that's where he's got the most merits.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I think this is probably one where I very clearly want to play Precious in the absence of Cat. I don't say that a lot. Normally, it's something where it's 2 super cheap centers for San Antonio, or you only go to one guy because they're just going to look drastically better on a 7-8 game slate, on a 2-game slate even. Like, I'm almost always willing to embrace it, but on this one, because Cat's at 9,700 on DraftKings, I think for Precious to really smash and be like put up 22, 24 fantasy points, something probably happened to Cat in some capacity. They did not play next to each other as much as I was hoping in that Toronto game. They ended up staggering them a little bit more. It still worked out because it was a showdown slate, and it could work out today because it's a 2-gamer, but I think more times than not, you're going to capture that upside by being absent of the 50% owned Cat. On FanDuel, it's kind of interesting where it's 4,300 for Precious Achiuwa, power forward center. Karl-Anthony Towns is at 9,500, so even a little bit better value than what you're looking at over on DraftKings, which is kind of absurd. 8,500 for Jalen Brunson. He's the most popular piece that you're looking at there. And you do get a boost for some of the stock upside for an OG Anunoby, a Josh Hart, and Dyson Daniels for Atlanta on the other side, somebody that I'm kind of interested in for FanDuel purposes. But is there anything else you wanted to cover with this game? Because I think for the most part, we're going to just be waiting on Jalen Johnson and Josh Hart news for sure.
Yeah, I would say OG Anunoby to me feels like a flat with the field stand. I'm low on Bridges right now. I get Bridges being a tournament play. He's just been so bad on the air at 0.76 fantasy points per minute. It's hard for me to really want to gravitate to that play right now. And where are you with Brunson? Because Brunson, I'm a little bit low on projection wise, and he's going to be played by about half the lineups, one of the chalkiest plays in the slate. I like the price tag for him, but I have a hard time playing Brunson and Cat together. I do feel like they kind of pull from each other a little bit in terms of the ceiling. Are you crazy on Brunson? Like, where are you with him relative to that half the field?
Jalen Brunson is my highest owned player on the slate, I believe. Okay. Let me take a look. 1 second. Yeah, I have 64% of him. He's my highest owned player.
Okay, so that's the stand. I feel like the rates have been down for him, kind of a little bit like what we talked about with Cat or with Jalen Johnson and Trae Young. Like, he and Cat are kind of the same thing, where I think Cat's been the one who's been dominating the ball a little bit more and obviously contributing enough in rebounds that puts him over the top. Whereas, like, for Brunson, I just feel like it's kind of a facsimile as well to like the Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam thing, where I just get less Halliburton because the rates changed materially since Siakam came in. I'm just like, I feel it's a little. Price tag is great for Brunson. I'll say that. It's a lot of ownership for Brunson when everybody else on the roster kind of pulls from him if he doesn't get there.
Yeah, what's interesting to me about Brunson is, I mean, you talk about the rates coming down. So is the price tag. I mean, this guy was 9K plus for a majority of last season without Cat. I think they're figuring out ways to play better. It's Atlanta on the other side. The pace is going to get pushed. And I'm not a big DVP person, but Trae Young, not exactly known for his defense. So if Dyson Daniels isn't switching over, they just don't have a lot of, like, you can't have Trae Young out there guarding Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges. He's going to get completely murdered. And so it's going to have to be Trae Young on Jalen Brunson for probably more than they would want, I would assume. There's obviously a lot that goes into it, which is why I don't utilize DVP. I just basically look at the pace and move on from there. But I think Jalen Brunson probably my favorite spend up on the slate. And there are other point guard options, no doubt about it. But you got to kind of pick one and stand with it. And I think Jalen Brunson's going to be the best for me.
Yeah, I think this is one we're probably, I guess, just in a little bit in loggerheads with, but like I'm gonna get 33% Brunson. I like having less than him and having some flexibility to get some more Trey, some more Steph Curry. So that's how I'm gonna try to attack it. But I think your approach is right, and really the $8,500 price tag, like that feels really nice for Brunson. And if he really beats his ceiling, I mean, he could put up 6x value at that salary, which is not crazy to think about.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to talk about those guys. We'll do that here in a second. But first, if you're looking to get the Sims tool, which is obviously right there on your screen, Jordan Klein behind the virtual glass doing a great job showing you guys this, as always, for free over on Playback Nonstop and then on the screen here on YouTube. You can get it for free by just checking out one of our 11 partner sites. We have Pick'em on the left side. We got Sportsbooks on the right side. Whether it's just the Bet365 offer where it's bet 5, get 150. That's a pretty incredible deal if you have it available in your state. But you'll also get the Sims tool for a month completely free in any sport that you choose. If you haven't signed up at Underdog, it's bet 5, get 50. You get an opportunity to then turn that into, $45 of equity in Underdog credit over there, as well as a month of the Sims tool. It's lots of ways that these sites have helped us out to be able to get you that Sims tool and use it. If you have it in NFL, takes you up almost through the entire playoffs right now. In the NBA, we're going to be going strong here for the next 4 or 5 months. Get familiar with it now, because if you guys haven't seen the Stokastic HOF over on X, people are winning using these tools daily. It is truly a godsend type tool. And so if you guys want to check it out for free, sign up with one of those 11 sites. You have to follow 4 simple steps, but mainly it comes down to sending us to Stokastic, support at Stokastic, sending your sign up email and your first settled bet. So those are the 2 things, your sign up email and your first settled bet. When you do that, we're going to set you up with the Sims tool for 1 month completely free. It's only if you're 21 and over. If you have a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Alrighty, we got, 16 minutes, plenty of time for us to cover the ins and outs of Golden State going up against Houston. They've lost like 14 consecutive games, 15 consecutive games against the Golden State Warriors, have the Houston Rockets, and yet they're sitting here favored by 2.5, opened at 3, or opened at 1, actually. No, went the other direction, 2.5, 222.5 total. Andrew Wiggins in. Fred VanVleet officially in, but we're waiting on that big Q tag. Alperen Şengün, questionable on the Houston side. That confirmed matters. Now, there's nothing you can do about it if you have Alperen Şengün, because you're going to have to swap it into something that's cheaper. There's nobody on par with his price tag here. But starting on the Golden State side, Steph Curry, any type of a playoff format, whether it's the Olympics, whether it's the NBA Cup, whether it's the actual playoffs, which he's dominated for a decade plus. How do you feel about Steph? Because if you're lower on Jalen Brunson, I have a feeling ownership probably coming in on his side of things.
Yes, I'm getting about 21% of Steph Curry right now. I could see that being a little bit higher in my final numbers. I'm with you. I think that's really the main logic there. And again, we have some narrative with Trey and MSG, though. That's the one, for some reason, that's the one narrative chat's like, oh, that was a bridge too far. It's only a couple games. Okay. We've talked about 1 game of DVP stats. We can't talk about Trey and MSG. Fair enough. For Steph Curry, though, tournament format, the one thing you worry about, this is a tough Houston defense. The efficiency for them going to be a pretty big step down in terms of defensive efficiency, versus the Golden State efficiency on their side. So for Steph in this spot, I worry a little bit about it naturally. The prop markets seem to support him being a little bit better assisting today. I think that makes sense to me. But I want to take shots at Steph no matter what. So being, if the field's going to be at under 20%, getting to 20 to 25 feels about right to me, to at least get some skin in the game there. Rest of the Warriors, I think a lot more ownership though, but Steph to me, getting more of him, getting a little bit more Trey Young. I think those are my stands, and VanVleet on the other side too is gonna be pretty chalky for me as well.
Well, let's talk Buddy Hield in the starting lineup next to Steph Curry, because that's kind of what they've gone to here of late. It's Curry, Hield, Wiggins, Kuminga, Green. Kuminga wasn't somebody who was starting earlier. Now he's out there. And then you could get Gary Payton II in random times. I think everybody's under the assumption that Buddy Hield is getting this start no matter what. And I want to at least just throw it out there that everything is fair game when it comes to Steve Kerr and setting these lineups based on what he thinks he needs facing the other side. Now, I think Buddy Hield, if you had asked me 50-50, hey, where do you put your money on it? Of course, I would say Buddy Hield starts coming off of starting the last one, but I just want to throw it out there that there's a world where it ends up being Gary Payton II to deal with Jalen Green. And that's at least interesting to me, where if I'm looking to get away from somebody's ownership that's pulling it right now, Buddy Hield, 4,500 shooting guard. I know that we'll have enough. It's a 2-game slate. You're going to find different ways of moving those positions around, but not if you only have like 2 or 3 lineup spots, and definitely not if they have Alperen Şengün there. You're going to be left leaving something on the table for sure. Buddy Hield, 33% ownership, more or less?
I am getting a lot more. I'm actually at 56% ownership on Hield right now. I'm with you if that were to change, if he were not to start, that would kind of mute any value I'd get out of him right now. So I'll make that caveat, but he's at a 1.02 fantasy point per minute pace on the year, 23% usage amidst obviously a fairly high usage Golden State lineup. So I'm okay with him. I think he's a good play if he starts. If he didn't start, getting Gary Payton, I'm already getting a little bit more than the field of him, 19% compared to the field's 17 and change. So we could say basically flat with the field on that. Payton would look like a lot better play, averaging 0.86 fantasy points per minute, so been a little bit less good. But I think Hield would benefit if he's starting because, again, really good defensive team for Houston side. You might have seen some articles going around today of them talking about how Amin Thompson, Ime Udoka should never give up and bucket on him his entire time that he's playing in the NBA. That's kind of what they're bringing to the table here. So if you shut down Steph Curry, Buddy Hield probably gets going a little bit more if they're going to be in this game. Pajemski for whatever minutes he plays, Kuminga, Wiggins, like those guys all get a little bit more opportunity. So if you're not playing Steph, these guys should be more appealing. And Steph lineups, I probably play a bit less of them just because of how that should go.
Yeah, everybody talking about the thing that happened last game. He's in the projected starting lineup every site you look at. Curry, Hield, Wiggins, Kuminga, Green. That is the projected starting 5 at Stokastic. It's the projected starting 5 everywhere that I'm looking. Not a single place has it different. Like, if you told me who would start in his stead, I mean, we've seen Lindy Waters start for God's sakes at times. Gary Payton II has stepped in there. Brandon Pajemski next to Curry. But I'm assuming Buddy just continues to start here because that's what everybody is projecting right now.
And Buddy started alongside Gary Payton last game, so it's not like
I'm so confused. I thought Gary Payton was mainly the beneficiary. Again, it wouldn't shock me to see it be Gary Payton II. I'm putting things on your radar. It's Steve Kerr. To be honest, I don't think anybody actually knows what's going on with Steve Kerr. I think Kuminga going to look good either way. I think Buddy Hield probably going to benefit a little bit more. I mean, he's benefited both ways with Curry on and off the floor. With Curry on the floor this season, 197 minutes they've played together. He's got a 67% true shooting, 46.3% three-point percentage. It stands to reason that you benefit a lot when more attention is drawn towards Steph Curry, where it would normally go towards Buddy Hield in that second unit.
Somebody in YouTube chat just called you the DFS Stephen A. Smith, which I don't. That's so on the left.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
You give me no Stephen A. Smith vibes. That's just made me laugh. That's
yeah. I can't imagine if Stephen A. Smith cited an effective field goal percentage, I might actually fall over and die. Like, could you imagine?
He made the Simpsons cast the other day, so that's close enough.
He's so much richer than all of us. It's not even funny.
He's taking so much to go like, that man can't play basketball. And it's like, oh, that guy goes for a triple-double. He's fine.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. But also good for him. Get that money. That's the way I look at it. But anything else on the Golden State side?
YouTube Skip Bayless is what Ryan gave. That one's better.
YouTube Skip Bayless. That's pretty good. That's pretty funny.
Kevon Looney, right? So we talked about him kind of through the prism of other guys, but he's your value play on the slate, averaging about 1.18 fantasy points per minute on the year. I'm at 1.19 today. I don't know how to get away from him. I'm getting him in 75% of my lineups. It'll come down a little bit more because when I pull in my final sim lineups, I'll set the uniques number to be a little bit higher. My 150 set for the shows, I just set the uniques is what they are. But I think for Looney, I'll probably get still 2x the field of him, at least 50%. I think he's one of the value plays, assuming nothing else opens up from our Q tag guys. Where are you with Looney? Because like, I know you talked about the Atlanta Stars were trying to use it as a pivot, but if he's getting at his run, like, I don't know, like assuming the rotations are the same, he got 21 minutes last game, project for 21 today. He could put up enough of a number in that time period, I think.
Yeah, well, he definitely can. He's better than a fantasy point per minute producer. He's 4K. We are kind of value strict. Like we have no value whatsoever here at the moment. He's played 27, 22, 21 minutes. I will say the one thing I want is Alperen Şengün and Steven Adams in, because I think that just kind of solidifies those minutes for Kevon Looney. It wouldn't shock me to see him only play 16, 17 minutes, but even still at 4K, I mean, what else do we have even close to his price tag that we're kind of interested in? So he's the one value play that I'm over the field on and I am just fine with. Can't imagine there's a whole lot that would change for me there. I'm overweight to Gary Payton II, hoping that he ends up somehow, some way sneaking into more minutes to be out there on Jalen Green, to be out there against some of those main guys. Obviously, Dylan Brooks has liked to chuck a lot more of late. Amin Thompson's just doing all of the things. My God, Amin Thompson is awesome, but he's 6,300 on this slate. Yeah, Gary Payton the second, definitely somebody that I'm also going to be over on. I'm right around the field on Kuminga. I'm right around the field on Curry. Right around the field on Draymond at 14%. And I have almost no Andrew Wiggins, and he is definitely the guy that scares me the most that could just obliterate the slate at 6,600. He's probably the Bobby Portis play of the day, if we're being honest.
Yeah, that's not a bad one. The price tag, maybe not the best at 6,600 for him, but small forward, power forward. Again, producing over a fantasy point minute on the year, 1.03 for him. I think he's one of those plays. I got him at 14%, which is like barely above the field. He's a play that I think just works well if you have that salary left over, you have the dual position eligibility, even though it's both forward. I would say that's where his main opportunity is just that he makes lineups work. But yeah, Kuminga, I'm with the field on well. Same thing for me here. Like the big stand is just a Looney thing. And Looney, if he does play less minutes, it's probably because he got squeezed by Draymond Green. The issue is I don't think you want to play Draymond at his price tag that much, but Draymond is a tournament play. I got there barely at all. So I just have to kind of flag that it does stand out that maybe Draymond's a sneaky play here, even though that price tag is just awful for him.
Yeah, Draymond, it's kind of weird because I think that Minnesota game, watched most of that there. He got in foul trouble. He started yapping because that's what Draymond Green does. But there's a chance you see more minutes for him, which leads us into the super chat from Sean Geezy, $5. Sean, doing great stuff. Obviously just saw another takedown from him the other night. Guy's on fire again this season. Do we think Kerr condenses the rotation at all? Was thinking Lindy might get cut a bit, but it's always tough with Kerr. Curious what you guys think. I think you're thinking about this correctly, but I think at the end of the day, you want to trust a lot of what we're projecting here because it's so hard for me to envision a world where with no Moses Moody and no D'Anthony Melton, that they don't at least give certain guys an opportunity to come in and make a difference in the game. And they can always play themselves into more minutes. But with Wiggins, Draymond, Curry, those three kind of solidified, it'll kind of be a hot hand approach between Hield, Kuminga. If Looney's playing really well, they can slide Draymond Green over to the 4, Jabari Smith and Şengün there. Gary Payton, Brandon Pajemski, who we really haven't talked about all that much. I mean, there's a lot of guys that they still have that they're going to go to. I'd be surprised if they didn't play 9 or 10 deep. I mean, even Orlando, for as consolidated as that wasn't as much tournament winning upside as they had with like 3 or 4 guys yesterday, that was kind of a deeper rotation than even I was expecting there. So what do you think about that one, Spags?
Yeah, I mean, there's 10 guys projected for minutes for Golden State right now. So I think really you try to carve it up however you want. I think they need size here, given the matchup of Şengün's in. Like Eric mentioned, just knowing you have the center minutes seems like a positive thing for Looney to be able to get there. But honestly, even if they don't have a big man in, I think Looney's still getting you 16-ish. And I think he could still get there at a 4K salary. So tend to be on the side of Looney now that Trace Jackson Davis not in the rotation. I think that's a positive for him. But yeah, you can make some guesswork, I think, if you want to. I just probably wouldn't.
Avi Schreier, $1.99. Kuminga or Draymond on FanDuel with Curry? That would be, for me, today, for my money, Draymond Green.
On FanDuel. I'd go Kuminga, personally.
Let me take a look here. Kuminga and Draymond. I mean, I have them projected just about the identical amount, and Kuminga's pulling about 15% more. I think it's really close. If you're looking for just raw projection, going to be Kuminga. I think from a tournament perspective, Draymond Green probably for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There's going to be more ownership on Kuminga no matter where you're playing today.
All righty. Let's round it out with Houston, which is obviously the most difficult to talk about. Lingering Q tag that exists there for Alperen Şengün. If he's out, this is just like the team that you wish you had jammed on the slate. But I repeat, I think he's more likely to play. And Steven Adams, that's going to make that Q tag look drastically more important. Jayshawn Tate, questionable. Very, very important there. You could look at a very small ball lineup, which probably hurt Kevon Looney to some extent, but still we'll probably have him out there for rebounding purposes. Let's just talk about the popular guys first. Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green. I think it's about appropriate. If you want to get to a little bit more of either of them, I have no problem with it. If you get something to happen to Şengün, they're two of the best plays on the slate.
Yeah, assuming that Şengün is in, I'm currently higher on VanVleet, getting him in 48% of my top 150 lineups. A little bit lower on Jalen Green at 29%, but that's not that far off the field. VanVleet, frankly, I worry a little bit about the matchup, and I worry about VanVleet in general this year. Like, he's looking older, looking not washed, but looking certainly not like young VanVleet. Historically, he's been the guy that'll chase Steph Curry around, but they have enough guys there that VanVleet doesn't have to do it. But I kind of wonder if he's going to be like I got him. And then it's just going to be one of those things that takes all his energy away on the offensive side. But projection wise, that's not really data to say that. I think the projections look good for him. The price tag looks good for him. So Van Vliet, one of my highest exposed guys on the slate. But low on Şengün by a little bit. I still think Cat and Şengün lineups are nice because you're getting away from that value Looney chalk and trying to come over the top. I think those are worth prioritizing, getting some exposure to. But the Rockets, I'm hoping Şengün goes because I don't know if I'll have enough flexibility to really make the most if he were out and I had a late swap around it.
Yeah, it's really, really hard. I think for me, pre-baking lineups in with some of that news already factored in. Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green already look good. If you want to give them an ROI boost, I probably have no issue with that. If you want to play the game theory aspect of it, I think Jabari Smith is probably the guy who is over-owned right now, but you would want to have all of in all the land in the event that Şengün was out. His usage would take a spike. His rebound rate takes a big spike. And you would definitely see a minute spike here as well. Plus, with Steven Adams sitting there lingering, I don't know what that workload could look like, even if Steven Adams plays here in the absence of a Şengün. But with it being his right knee and his age and everything else, I would think Jabari Smith probably stands to benefit the absolute most, don't you?
Yeah, Jabari Smith is a guy I won't get a lot of on the slate. I'll get him 13% compared to the field's 27 if we do have Şengün in. If Şengün's out, he just becomes a different play because he needed those Jabari Smith 5 minutes and like used to get that last year a little bit more. This year, it's completely gone. As a result, he's down to 0.81 fantasy points per minute for him. Rebounding, not that well, 12% clip. But having Şengün just not in there opens things up enough. I still like Tari Eason a lot more, no matter what the situation. I think he's a great play right now. Getting him in over half my lineups, and that would certainly go up if Şengün were out. But Jabari Smith is just like, I don't want to play him right now, but I'd have to play some if Şengün were out.
Yep, definitely have to play some. And yeah, looks over-owned to me as well. I think that's probably it for me in like a pronounced way. Like Dylan Brooks, 0.72 DraftKings points per minute player. He's 4,400. We've seen him eat up more usage of late here. What do you make of that? 35, 38 minutes the last two games, 15, 19 points in each of those, just raw points. That is usage way up, 28 shot attempts the last two, but that's not the norm from Dylan Brooks. And plus, do we expect him to be a 40%, 45% three-point shooter going forward? No, he's 38.6% on the season, and even I think that's a little bit high. So how do you feel about Dylan Brooks as we kind of round out the entire show, actually?
Yeah, Dylan Brooks, I'm fly with the field on, getting a little bit less than 29% compared to the field, slightly over 29%. With you that I think he's probably just due to take more usage. He's now up to a 17% usage rate. He was at, 12 to 13% usage at points this year. So you're just seeing that kind of come out in the wash like it would normally. But he does play a lot of minutes. He does like to gun in certain spots when other guys are off the court, especially. If that helps him out. But true shooting, I would expect him to regress in the three-point shooting. He's still at only 54% true shooting on the year. So the three-pointer should start to come back down a little bit more, you would think. But he's an okay value play, like another guy in that 4K range. Really, all the guys 4K to 4,800, they're all kind of playable to varying degrees.
Alrighty, y'all. We've reached the end of our boarding walk. It is myself, at Eric Lindquist over on X. It is Chris Spags over on X. I always appreciate that he has the name also that is attached to his actual person. Chris, fantastic stuff as always. I love kicking it with you. We did not hit the 400 like mark, but I suppose as we get out of here, any final words from the people, from you or your little friend?
No, I think we got to keep the puppet special here, but it was special just being here with Eric today. At a certain point, I'm sure holiday season here, puppets love to pop up whenever you least expect them. So I'm sure Puppet Lindquist will be back, but hit the like button before you go. Hang out for Greg and Belman coming up next. Great shows there, and go check out Splash Play NBA at 4 p.m. Monday to Friday if you want.
Splash Play NBA. That's what I was going to round it out with. Make sure that you throw that into the YouTube chat. I don't know why you haven't thrown that into YouTube chat.
I don't want to
do it. I give you permission. Definitely throw that in there. Okay. Thank you to everybody. I saw that News God wanted everybody to know that you have to specify. If you guys sign up with the link join, which Greg will talk about here in a second. If you guys want to sign up with that, specify which sport you want access to in that email where you send the first settled bet and you send that welcome email. Thank you, Jordan Klein. I'm going to get the heck up out of here. Until next time, friends, enjoy the deeper dive coming up next.
What is happening, everyone? Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. Mix things up a little bit tonight. We had Eric over on the deep dive, and now Live Before Lock, I'm joined here by Matt Belman. Josh out for the night. He's going to pick up a new puppy, so that's very exciting. Josh will be a new dog dad in, I guess, like a couple hours or something like that. But Josh, a pretty long drive tonight. Wasn't sure if he was going to be able to make it to the show in time, so no big deal. Matt jumps on Live Before Lock with me. We get Eric over to the deep dive. Things a little bit mixed up, and it'll be good. I'm looking forward to it. 2-game slate tonight. And also this, because I realized that this is something I was going to have to clarify. So this, and I'll explain why I have to clarify too. Snorlax shirt. All right. So first off, I really like the shirt, but I'm on a meeting earlier with Ben Raza, and I guess the way my microphone is kind of covering up the shirt, it was like this sort of. And
I see.
So I'm on a meeting with Ben and some other devs at the site too. And Ben just kind of starts making a weird face, and then he starts laughing. And then he messages me, DMs me, and goes, "What the hell does it say on your shirt?" And then I put 2 and 2 together and realized what was going on. So Snorlax shirt. And this says current on it, no matter how the microphone in front of me may block certain letters on the shirt ahead of time. So if anybody has questions, that's what the shirt is. It doesn't say whatever the hell else you might think it might say. But Snorlax shirt, kid-friendly, family-friendly shirt. It's not anything else. So guys, do us a favor. Like the video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Matt, how you feeling about tonight's slate? It's an interesting one. We just got some Hawks news, which we'll go over, and there's still a lot more news to come.
Yeah, I like these 2-game slates. It's been a minute since we did a show together, so I'm hyped for that. More news than normal for a 2-game slate, but with it being the NBA Cup, I presume that like most guys that are questionable are probably going to play just because the game actually means something, which most regular season games don't. So I'm feeling pretty good about this slate. Obviously, we've got the Knicks news with Josh Hart and then Sengun. And we'll just have to wait and see what happens because as NBA goes, like one injury and one guy being out changes the entire landscape of the slate.
Yeah, and let's talk about some of those because I'm curious if you have any kind of leans on whether these guys will be in or out and how it is that we could prepare for these sorts of situations. Good news, we've already got the Atlanta Hawks stuff. That's out of the way. So we know for sure all those guys are in. Trae Young is in. Jalen Johnson is in. We've also got DeAndre Hunter in. Bogdan Bogdanovic is in. There was an insane amount of players on the injury report earlier today, and most of it's been cleared up now with those guys being in. So just going over every piece of news from the players who are on the injury report that maybe you guys might still think are questionable. So Sengun, he's still questionable. Hawks guys hit on them. They're all in now. Fred VanVleet, he was questionable earlier today. He's no longer on the injury report. We're waiting on an update from Josh Hart. This does seem to be pretty last minute, so I think he's a true 50-50 call. Josh Hart, considering this game starts in, a little bit less than 40 minutes. We don't have an update on him. Still think he's more likely to play than not, but something to keep an eye on here. You got Andrew Wiggins. He was questionable. He's now probable. And then Tari Eason also, he was questionable earlier. He has now been taken off the injury report, same as Fred VanVleet. And then you got Steven Adams questionable, but he doesn't really matter all that much. 2 big ones, Josh Hart, Alperen Sengun. There's no adjustments we're going to be making pre-slate for Josh Hart because we're going to know whether he's in or out by the time the game starts. Do you lean on whether Josh Hart will play or not?
He's one I don't because he actually missed last game. And so I agree with you. He's truly questionable. I would be very surprised if Sengun sat. He hasn't sat at all this season. So, I mean, even in the last game he played 36 minutes. I would be very surprised if he doesn't play in this NBA Cup game. Hart, I truly I have no idea because he missed last game. It's taken so long for them to announce it. I think you're totally right in that it's a true 50-50 as of right now.
Yeah, so we'll get that update. I assume probably in 7-ish minutes. I think that's my prediction. At 6:30 Eastern time on the dot, we get a Josh Hart update. Make a prediction. This is the first game that we're going to be playing live before lock. New bit that we've never done here before. You got to mix things up when it's different combinations. What time do we get the Josh Hart news?
I'm going to say, we were talking about prices right before we got on here. Yep. 6:31.
All right. It's a clever strategy. I like what you're doing there. I like what you're doing. And I see we got some super chats that have come in as well. So once we get that news, we'll hit on what the implications are for Josh Hart. But then also the big one for tonight's slate is going to be Sengun being questionable. He was present at shoot-arounds earlier, but questionable on the injury report. If he's ruled out, it's going to set up a late swap situation, kind of similar to last night. PJ Washington ruled out in between games. We could have the same situation tonight with Şengün. Do you think he's going to be in or out? And does your opinion change based on the fact that he was available at shoot around earlier?
Yeah, I think he definitely plays. He hasn't missed a game all season. He played 36 minutes in the Rockets' last game. Like, why? Like, I get it. There's probably something a little bit off with his knee. That's why they're listing him questionable, but I think it's more of a probable than anything else.
Yeah, so we'll see what ends up happening. By the way, for just clarity, because I think you misspoke a little before. Josh Hart did play last game. He got ejected, though.
Oh, okay. That was I must have misread that. My bad.
Yeah. Played in the game, but got ejected, or as they call it on Twitter, ejaculated from the game. That's the thing that people like to do when players get kicked out. Some super chats that are coming to us. Shout out to Chris Williams, gifted out 10 YouTube memberships. Chris, we appreciate you for supporting the channel. And then also left us a super chat. It says, just a show of thanks for the great content. And Greg, yesterday when I atoned and gifted those subs that pissed off Brett Shoup, you said Chris is bringing himself some good karma. Well, I solo shipped second in the $8 atoning works. I don't know who Brett Shoup is. I don't know what happened that aggravated him yesterday. But look at that. Chris came in second place yesterday. Also, Chris DM'd me about it on Twitter. So I know for sure. I saw the lineup. I saw her finish the whole deal. So shout out to Chris Williams, who, just brings himself some good karma, some good luck into the atmosphere simply by giving out some YouTube memberships, giving back to the community. So shout out to Chris for the big win last night. Now let's go and see if there was any other questions that came into Discord that we could hit on really quick. A couple of them. Oh, let me wrap up the Şengün thing first. Are there any kind of adjustments you think we should be making pre-lock just for the event that Şengün could potentially sit today? I have one that I did. I'm curious if you have any thoughts.
Personally, I don't think he sits, so not for me. And again, it's only 2 games, so there's not like a ton you can do. And I'll say this just about Josh Hart real quick. Me being wrong about him missing last game changes my stance. I also think he plays now. If he hasn't missed any games, I'm just seeing now on Twitter people posting videos of him warming up. So I would lean that he plays now also. But as far as Şengün, not really for me as of now. How about yourself?
Yeah, so as far as Şengün, I do agree. I think he's more likely to play than sit. Now, with that said, I don't know that for 100% certainty. And there is an individual player that I really do like boosting just to get myself overweight to the field to him. Jabari Smith Jr. We've got him projected for ownership in the 20% range today. And kind of similar to a guy who I was boosting yesterday, just because I thought Dallas guys could be out. There's very comparable ownership here to Jabari Smith. He's around the same price point. We're yesterday with Klay Thompson, where he was somebody who was like, hey, if PJ Washington sits, I think Klay stands to benefit. And it's not like he killed or anything last night, but I was happy I had him. I was happy I got more exposure to him because he was solid and he projected better once PJ Washington was out. And the way I feel with Jabari Smith is if Şengün's in and I have him, cool. I don't have a massive issue with that, but I definitely want to be having lineup spots reserved for Jabari Smith Jr. in the event that there is no Şengün for today. So I know it's a question that we always get on the show. It's going to be a common one here today. Who do we boost in the Sims? Jabari Smith is the guy for me, Matt, because he is somebody who gets to play a little bit more center minutes in the absence of Şengün. You see a boost in his rebound rate. And then also with this being a game that has a little bit more implications with it being a Nation NBA Cup game, if he starts the game off shooting well, you could see 30+ minutes from Jabari Smith Jr. So that's a guy for me I want to get more of.
So I totally am with you. And it's 2-part. One, yeah, I agree. If Şengün's out, all of a sudden, like him and Tari Eason, all those guys look a lot better. But even if Şengün's in, they're good plays for this slate. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
And officially, Josh Hart is in. All of the Knicks guys are in. We just got Jalen Brunson and Cat in. They were both probable, so nothing crazy there. But Josh Hart also is going to be in for today. So something for you guys to be aware of. We got the Knicks starting lineup, the totally normal one. We all know the Knicks starting lineup. Brunson, Bridges, Anunoby, Hart, and Towns as the starting 5 for the New York Knicks. Let's go into Discord and answer some of the questions that are sitting there for us. To see a few of them came in. First off, we've got JEW. He says, on a 2-game slate, do you cap exposures or use ROI boost or uniques to even out some of the ownership? So not really to even out the ownership. It's more so to, it's not that much different from the normal slates. It's just how do I play towards the injury news for a 2-gamer? So yeah, it's what I said before. It's Şengün, even though I think he's more likely to play than sit, I could be wrong, and I want to be prepared for that situation. So Jabari Smith Jr., I boosted him just so I'd get myself a little bit more flexibility in the event that Şengün sits. That's the way that I went about approaching that there. Next question. It is from Mike1377 wants to know, how do you get different on a 2-game slate using the Sims? Yeah, so one way you could definitely do it is by boosting some lower owned guys. You could also look for some leverage spots. So one thing that I think Eric did that was very, very sharp last night, Matt, and mark this down at
Anthony Black,
6:30 Eastern time, December 11th, 2024. I gave praise to Eric Lindquist. Look for some of these leverage plays that matter more for a 2-game slate. So one thing that Eric did that also helped some of my lineups last night, although didn't ultimately matter in terms of winning a GPP because Bobby Portis, for no good reason at all, just had a ceiling game yesterday, was boosting Anthony Black yesterday and getting some leverage for him off of Cole Anthony. So what I think that you would want to be doing on a 2-game slate, if this is what you want to do, you want to differentiate your lineups, you want to look for a way that you're going to be getting leverage off the field. I think we find some of these leverage spots with somebody who's really popular, but has a chance to fail in some sort of way and who could benefit in the event that player fails. So with that in mind, Matt, we don't have anybody who's nearly as popular as what Cole Anthony was last night, or at least ownership projection. He was projected for over 50% ownership. He ended up being popular, is like right around 50%. We don't have any value plays that are popping up quite that meaningfully. We do have Kuminga in the mid 40% range. We've got Brunson in the mid 40% range, Cat in the mid 40% range. Who do you view as a leverage option off of a chalk play or just a lower owned player that you think would be warranted to boost in our Sims to maybe get more exposure to them?
So it is different from last night because we don't have that one guy that's just overwhelmingly owned more than anyone else on the field. But for me, it'd have to be one of the Golden State guys, Kuminga, Buddy Hield. Like, these guys certainly aren't, bust proof. And we know that Steve Kerr will change his rotations quarter by quarter. So it'd have to be one of the Golden State guys. Again, I think that they're good plays, and I don't necessarily know who the pivots are, but just they're getting a lot of love for a little bit more uncertainty than normal.
If you had to pick one guy from Golden State, who do you go with?
Probably, it's tough because I want to say Buddy Hield, but he's so cheap. Probably Buddy Hield. There's a lot of plays in between 4 and 5K. And I'll say this, maybe you don't have a direct pivot on the same team like Cole Anthony to Anthony Black, but you don't necessarily need that. Like, there are other pivots from other teams where Buddy Hield is priced.
Yeah, there's actually a good amount of guys that I'm overweight to the field to. It's nobody who's 5% owned on a 2-game slate. Those guys are pretty hard to come by, but there are players who are projected for ownership in the 20 to 25% range. A couple of them a couple percentage points higher that I get into over 40% of lineups. So Jabari Smith, mentioned him before. He's somebody like being overweight to the field too. Şengün's another one who, if Şengün plays today, I do think what the field is going to do is just gravitate towards, because in general, the field doesn't love to just play a guy who's questionable heading into lock where you could get stuck with them later on. Şengün is only projected for 26% ownership, but that's, based on data. You could see Şengün maybe even be as low as sub 20% owned. If that's the case, we know that there's a big ceiling for Şengün. I think that he's the guy with the most upside for potentially the lowest ownership. So Şengün at $9,200. That's somebody who is a pay up option I really like. And he's a good pivot off of Cat, because Cat is currently projected to be the most popular spend up option on the slate. You're getting a guy in Şengün who's $500 cheaper, about half the ownership. I think that's a really good pivot to make.
I couldn't agree more. That's definitely one of the ones I'm looking at. Yeah, because I'm with you. Like, I, maybe even have more conviction than you do that he plays. And again, I think a lot of people will see the tag and, not necessarily want to play him as much as if he didn't have the tag. I'm right with you.
Yeah, so that's the way that I think makes the most sense there, JEW. It's not, or sorry, it was Mike who asked that particular question. There's not something you can do in the settings. I mean, if you wanted to really up the amount of uniques, that would diversify your lineups, but won't necessarily make them way different than the field. Find some of those leverage options or lower owned plays that that you like. And for me, Şengün's going to be an option. Alucard left us a question in Discord. It says, same question as yesterday. Which of the main spend ups are you most likely to fade in single entry? So yesterday we had SGA, we had Luka Doncic, we had Giannis, and ultimately we saw a massively terrible game, not just from Luka, but from all the Dallas players as a whole. Now he's asking the same question for today for a DraftKings single entry. If we're going to be getting away from the popular spend up options, which one would it be? So let's see. Pricing for today. And this is a much different slate in terms of pricing, because yesterday when you had SGA and you had Luka and you had Giannis, they were all 10,000 plus. There isn't a single player priced at 10,000 or higher. So let's lower this threshold a little bit, and we'll look at the 4 guys in the 9K range, Matt. So Cat, Curry, Trae Young, Şengün. Those 4. And the question is, which of the spend ups, just to make sure it's clear, which of the main spend ups are most likely to fade in a single entry? So between Şengün, Trae Young, Steph Curry, Cat, I mean, obviously we can't play all of them in a single entry anyway, but if you're going to be getting off of one of these guys, who's the one you're least apt to pay up for in a single entry lineup?
Probably Steph, just because of the matchup against Houston. Like, Towns projects so much better. I think that there's merit, because he's going to be so much lower owned, but of the 4 guys that are expensive, Curry for me is the one guy that is most likely not to make it. How about you?
It's tough. It's tough because there's clearly a massive ceiling in Steph Curry. He does project the worst of those 4. The other thing too is Steph Curry, which not necessarily a terrible thing for DFS purposes, but also really wide range of outcomes. With Steph Curry though, because he adds a little bit in the assist and the rebound department, but not quite the same peripherals as what we'd see from other spend up options. So for instance, Trae Young, massive assist numbers. From Cat, you get some defensive stats, you get big rebound stats. From Şengün, you get pretty big rebound stats and also pretty solid assist stats. Steph Curry, you are really, really reliant on him having a heater game from 3 to hit that ceiling. And while they do happen, they don't happen nearly as frequently as the ceiling games for guys like Şengün or Cat or Trae Young, because of all the other peripheral stats that they come to the table with. So I'm going to agree with you. I think Steph is the one who I'm most apt to not play in a single entry for the slate.
Yeah, I've had a lot of success in my DFS career picking out spots to play Steph Curry, and I'm not saying I get it right every time. I liked it that it's an NBA Cup game. We all know Curry's prowess in the playoffs, Olympics, all that stuff. But man, Houston's perimeter defense is so good. I think they're going to do whatever they can to, again, they're not going to stop Curry, but to make life really, really hard for him. And yeah, it's an NBA Cup game, but Curry's a guy who's got numerous NBA titles. I'm not sure that this is as much of a get up spot for him as it might be for some other guys.
Next question. We got a super chat here from SC, and I think this is going to be relevant to a lot of people here, but he wants to know about, in the contest generator, the contest archetype settings, as well as the, let's see, was there anything else? Yeah, break down the contest archetype settings in the sim. Sorry if there's a tutorial that he didn't see. Yes, so the contest archetype settings, the way this feature works, would you mind going to the contest generator, Jordan, just so we could show people on the screen what it is we're talking about? Yes, you'll see on the right side of that screen, it says contest archetype. There's low stakes, there's high stakes, and then there's marquee. And also, if you guys want to sign up for any of these tools, link is down below in the YouTube description box. I use them to build out all my lineups. It's massively helped me improve my process. And not only could you just, sign up and go to the site, but I'm sure a lot of you guys know by now, don't forget about our link join, where if you sign up for any of our affiliate partners, for each one you sign up for, you get 1 free month of core access. We got pick'em sites in there. We've also got Sportsbook. So if you're in a state that has Sportsbook, doesn't have pick'em, or vice versa, we've got something for everybody to be able to claim a free month. And it also stacks, so you can sign up for as many of them as you want. And in addition to that, you could also do it for different sports. So if you wanted to sign up for 4 books, you do 2 free months of NBA, 2 free months of NFL. That's also fair play as well. Just make sure you go through the page we have down below in the YouTube description box. That is for tracking purposes, and follow the steps that we have here on the screen. So the settings here, high stakes and low stakes, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. If you are in a contest that is a higher stakes contest, like let's call it a $1,000 buy-in entry, or even like the $150 single entry, I think you should be putting that on the high stake setting. Now, what that does, if you guys have played DFS at different buy-in levels, I'm sure you've noticed that the ownership is different in different contests. Generally, this isn't going to be the same every single time, but more often than not, this is the case. And these are a lot of the contests that Matt plays in as well. As you move up in stakes, the field gets sharper, and that changes what the ownership is. So the reason that we have this slider in the contest generator is because when you move it, it is actually going to change the ownership projections in the contest pool generated for the stakes of that contest. So if you're playing in high stakes, you would set it on high stakes because that is going to make the field a little bit sharper. The chalkier plays become a little bit chalkier. But then on the other side, if you're playing in something like a $1 tournament or a quarter arcade or a dime time or something like that, you want to put it on low stakes because the chalkier players have less ownership. The field isn't quite as sharp in those stakes. So it's a way to more customize the lineups and the simulations that are going to gear it towards the field that you're playing in. And there's also in between, like there's in between low stakes and marquee. So let's say you're playing in something like a $3 contest, you go in between low stakes and marquee. And then also always check the post contest sims, and that'll give you a good idea of what some of the ownership looked like for some of the previous contests at that buy-in level. It's a good way to better inform yourself for what setting you should put on. But SC, if you have any additional questions to that, hit me up in Discord or Twitter, but I hope that is enough to cover what it is that you were looking for in that answer. The next super chat that we have here, it is from Almost Made, and he wants to know who are the top plays by position on FanDuel and also the overall best value. Matt, do you have lineups built out for FanDuel and DraftKings or just for one of the sites?
Just DK tonight. So you got
Okay.
FanDuel.
Totally cool. So I could handle this then. So Almost Made, top plays by position on FanDuel and best value. Yes. So starting at point guard, that is Jalen Brunson for me. One thing that I will add is a little bit of, sorry. That was where my DraftKings, it might be the same for FanDuel anyway, but let me go back to, here we go. All right. Now I've got the FanDuel tab up here. So at point guard over on FanDuel, the answer is still Jalen Brunson, but a little bit of a caveat here is that he's projected for 53% ownership. So he's going to be very popular, about even with the field there on Jalen Brunson. But Brunson, the one I get the most exposure to at point guard. At shooting guard, Buddy Hield, $4,400, dual position eligibility, point guard, shooting guard. It is pretty hard to find value on FanDuel. So for that reason, he stands out. You just got a guy who's $4,400. He's got an upside if he's making his shots for today. The rotation for the Warriors, it's always all over the place on a day-to-day basis. $4,400. I think Buddy Hield looks like a good value option. He's my most rostered shooting guard. At small forward, we got the cum bucket, Jonathan Kuminga. Power forward, that would also be Kuminga. So I'll go with a different guy for this position here, and that's going to be Andrew Wiggins, another one who's not massively contrarian or anything like that, but at 33% ownership, I have about half my lineup, so a good amount overweight to the field to him. And then at center, I really like going to Alpert and Şengün to get a little bit different. $8,900. I know he's projected for 30% ownership. I don't think he gets to the 30% ownership mark, just considering he's going to be questionable heading into lock. And I think a lot of people are going to build lineups. They're going to look at the slate and they're going to say, hey, if Şengün doesn't play on FanDuel, there aren't very many pivots to make, which is true. What you have to do if Şengün is out is you have to downgrade to Draymond Green, then spend up at another position. I think that hassle is going to lead people off of Şengün. I think he comes in closer to the 20% ownership range as opposed to the 30% he's projected for. And as for the best overall value options on FanDuel for looking cheap, Buddy Hield, Miles McBride. Let's see, is there any other super cheap options? Yeah, not really. Those are the two guys who are around 4K that I am getting to in a significant amount of lineups. And then SC left another super chat, just says, thanks, Greg. Covered all the bases and gave me clarity. Much appreciated. Anytime. Let's get back into Discord where, all right, here's a very, very difficult question to answer. Larson407, he wants to know, who is tonight's expected surprise Bobby Portis play of the day? Yeah, we did get a super chat last night where somebody asked us, what was the biggest expected surprise of the day, which is a very difficult question to answer because it's not really a surprise if you're expecting it. But who's the low-owned expected surprise of tonight, Matt?
I'm going to take a little bit different path with this one because I don't see the guy priced at where Portis was yesterday that has that upside. But I'm going to say Jalen Johnson, a guy that's fallen through the cracks a little bit on DraftKings at 8,300. I think he has a monster game here. He's been doing it all season. And he's not getting a ton of ownership. So give me Jalen Johnson.
I feel like if I say my answer is Şengün, but I think it's going to annoy people if I keep giving him if I just give Şengün as the answer for every single question we get today. I go 60 minutes, just answer Şengün for everything. So let's see if I'm going to go with somebody else. Sort by my exposures. That has to be somebody who I'm actually playing today. I think I had 4 lineups with Bobby Portis yesterday. All right, different price point if you want to go cheap. Kevon Looney, somebody I get overweight to the field too. And a big issue that we run into on both DraftKings and FanDuel, particularly if Şengün ends up playing today, there just aren't cheap value options to like, Matt. And I do think that's where we're going to have the possibility of somebody being in a winning lineup, especially with rotations being condensed today. I think we could have some cheap players in winning lineups that put up like 15 fantasy points. This isn't going to be your normal, oh my God, I played this guy for cheap and you need him to score like 25 or 30 fantasy points. I don't think that's going to be the case for today. And at least with Kevon Looney, he's somebody who now with the way that the Warriors have changed up their rotations, it looks like he's a pretty safe bet to play 20 plus minutes. And in those minutes, he's a pretty good fantasy producer. Not great, but pretty decent relative to his price point. I think that Kevon Looney is the best cheap option available on DraftKings, Matt. If we're talking about anybody who's 4K or less, Looney's the one I want to click on. And I'm kind of surprised he's not more popular given the lack of value on the entire slate. Is there anybody you like more than Looney who's 4K or cheaper?
Not really. I think you could make a case for Gary Payton there. They look pretty similar. The question with Looney is whether he's going to get the minutes. Again, we don't know the Golden State starting lineup yet, so we'll have to wait and see there. I think the 2 clear guys are either Looney or Payton, especially because McBride is 4,100, so he doesn't count here. Yeah, I think Looney is probably that guy for me as well.
Next question. It is from Einstein. He wants to know any interest in Amen Thompson today. I have him in a couple of lineups, not that much. I do think he's going to come in a little bit more popular in his ownership projection, considering how well he played last game. But if Şengün plays, it's kind of a hard price point for me to get to, Matt.
I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you there. And we're expecting Şengün to play. Again, anything can happen, but I would be personally surprised if he misses. So that's where my mindset is right now.
Yeah, so Amen Thompson, I'm underweight to the field on him. He's projected for around 20% ownership. I do think he comes in a little bit more popular than that. And, it's a 2-game slate, so a lot of players land in some lineups for me, but he wouldn't be in one lineup if I was playing single entry. And relative to the field, I've got less than half the amount of exposure the field has to him. Active Guru, top 3 highest owned players on DraftKings. Matt, who are the 3 highest priorities for you to be rostering tonight?
Considering their prices, I'm gonna say Kuminga number 1. As much as I talked about how them being good pivots, I'm gonna say Kuminga, Hield, and Towns. Like running the Sims, those are the guys I'm getting a ton of. Brunson too, but I would say Towns, Kuminga, and Hield are not only guys I'm getting a lot of, but getting way over the field on.
I think there is, this is always the case with the Knicks, but especially because this is a 1-game elimination game. There's a chance, Matt, all of the starters play 40 plus minutes today.
Yep.
There's a chance of that. And we have also seen that in these games where Tom Thibodeau likes to play the starters big minutes, there have been some insane workload games for Mikal Bridges, who's one of the most durable players in the NBA. He's only missed, like 1 game over the course of his entire career. What is it? He hasn't missed a game this year. Yeah, he isn't. Unless I'm missing something, I don't think Bridges has missed a game since 2020.
That's
looking
nuts.
Through his games here. And he also handles some pretty big workloads. Tom Thibodeau has no issue playing Mikal Bridges potentially entire games. Here are his minutes so far this month. 41 minutes, 38 minutes, 47 minutes, 36 minutes, 36. So he's averaging 40 minutes per game. And by the way, a lot of those games have been blowouts, and he is still averaging right around 40 minutes per game. So the game where he only played 36 against the Pelicans, the Knicks won that game by 33 points. That's what it took for him to play only 36 minutes. The game against the Magic, they won by 15. The game against the Hornets, which we've talked about this on the channel before, but not a remotely competitive game. The Knicks were up by 30 basically the entire way. He plays 47 minutes in that game, 38 minutes against the Detroit Pistons. And then last time out against the Raptors on Monday, he plays 41 minutes. So big potential for minutes from the Knicks. And in these scenarios, the guys who we see Thibodeau like to lean on, Mikal Bridges, Anunoby, he even plays Anunoby in garbage time with the bench unit at times. So anyway, 3 players I have the most exposure to: Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, and Buddy Hield. And none of them are projected for, I'm not going to say they're contrarian because that's certainly not the case, but they're not projected to be the most popular players on the slate.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would have like jammed all of them in if Hart were out, and I still think they're some of the best plays on the slate. Hart being in obviously makes them a little bit less appealing. And again, there are, it's Towns, Brunson, like all of them look good. So in any given lineup, I think you're gonna have to make some concessions. Towns would be my personal favorite, but he's clearly the most expensive and getting a ton of love as well.
10 minutes to go until lock, so make sure you guys are uploading your lineups. And then also, if you haven't done it yet, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. The next question here, it is from Boyle5000. He wants to know last man in, salary agnostic, Hart or Green. All right. So salary does not matter. And he is contemplating Josh Hart versus Jalen Green. That's pretty easily Josh Hart for me.
I'm with you.
Yeah, especially if you're not considering salary. If you're considering salary, it's a different scenario, but Josh Hart's $600 more expensive. We got him projected for a few more fantasy points. That's the guy to go to. Fish to Poop. Who are the cash game locks for FanDuel? Yes, if you're playing over on FanDuel, these are the guys who I think you absolutely have to be playing in a cash game tonight. All right. FanDuel must plays for cash games: Jalen Brunson, Fred VanVleet, Cat at center. I think you have to go to. As much as I like Şengün, that's a GPP option. You don't want to roll the dice with that in a cash game. So Brunson, VanVleet, Cat, Jonathan Kuminga, those 4, I'm going to say your must plays in cash games over on FanDuel. Matty T wants to know, this is a 2v2 question: Brooks and Anunoby or Bogdan Bogdanovic and Mikal Bridges, Matt? Mikal Bridges, I'll reread it to you. On one side, Dillon Brooks and OG Anunoby. On the other side, Bogdan Bogdanovic and Mikal Bridges.
Give me the Bogdan side, like pretty easily there. I just like him much more than Brooks, and OG and Bridges are very similar to me.
I'm in agreement. I don't have that much interest in Dillon Brooks for today. I don't really love Bogdan Bogdanovic either, to be honest, but I like him more than Brooks. And then Bridges, Anunoby, both important options for me.
Was the guy asking about Green versus Hart? Could he have meant Draymond Green, and would it change your answer?
I don't think, because Draymond Green's even cheaper than Jalen Green, isn't he?
Is he?
Let me go and look at the salaries. I might be remembering wrong.
I'm not totally sure.
Draymond Green is... Where's Draymond?
Draymond's 67.
But he also projects for way less fantasy points, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Draymond projects for about 29.5 fantasy points for us. And Jalen Green projects for 33.3. So, I mean, you've got, I don't know which Green. It's a good point because I don't know which Green it was that the question was about, but we've got Jalen Green projected for 4 more fantasy points than Draymond Green. And then we've got Josh Hart for a little bit more than Jalen Green there.
Yeah, and you liked Josh Hart more than Jalen Green anyway, so it would only, make sense that Draymond Green would be even lower on that pecking order. So makes sense.
Next question here. This one is from Omega 2K1. Yeah, Omega 2K1. Is Josh Hart a lock for 10 lineups on FanDuel? No. If I look at, I'll actually do this. I'll favorite my top 10 lineups on FanDuel, and I'll tell you how much Josh Hart I would have in them. All right, so if I was playing 10 lineups on FanDuel, I would have Josh Hart in. I would actually barely have Josh Hart in my top lineups. So not only is he not a lock, I would be underweight to the field on Josh Hart. I don't have any sort of massive issue with him. He's 7,400 on FanDuel as well. There's just other players I prefer. Definitely not a lock for me in Josh Hart. Not a lock. Although it does bring up a kind of interesting talking point for the slate, man. Obviously, the answer, if you just clearly don't think it should be anybody, that's a fine answer. If you had to lock one player into your lineups today, who would that one guy be?
Probably Kuminga. Price is just too good. He's good. Probably be Kuminga. Not saying that he couldn't bust, but I think it's just Kuminga. The ownership's there. He's just too cheap for his current role.
Yeah, once again, the answer for me is nobody that I would want to lock in. But if I had to lock in one guy, boy, I've been ragging on him a decent amount this year as well because of his broken jump shot. But I think Mikal Bridges is more likely to play over 40 minutes than under 40 minutes today. And at a reasonable price tag, that's giving you a good ceiling and a good floor. He's one of my most rostered players on the slate. If I had to lock in one guy, it would be Bridges. Also really helps that he's got good position eligibility. Let's see.
Good price tag too.
Final questions here. Just want to make sure we don't miss out on anything. And yes, one here from Einsteinium. Oh, and then another one came in as well from EMAC. But first, Einsteinium. Would we consider playing slow-mo over Gary Payton tonight? The mitten or slow-mo? Kyle Anderson.
I don't think I would play slow-mo over Payton, but I don't think it's the craziest pivot in the world. I'll say that.
Neither of them are massively popular or anything like that. We got ownership in the teens on Gary Payton. I do prefer Payton. Interesting eligibility that he's only small forward over on DK. $3,300 price point. Going to be a part of the rotation. Neither him nor Kyle Anderson have massive ceilings, but you're not playing them for their individual ceiling. You're playing them for the ceiling of some of the pay-up options. Maybe able to fit three of those guys in the 9K range into a lineup, and then you're using Gary Payton just to fill out the salary there. So, yeah, I prefer Gary Payton to Kyle Anderson for today. EMAC. He's got a question. Our old pal EMAC. This is a fun one, Matt. Listen, he's not doing the show even. He's still trying to host and ask you questions. Who wins straight up, Houston or Golden State?
I know that he's going like Houston hasn't beat Golden State in forever. Houston's favored.
No,
I'm going to say Golden State.
Sorry to cut you off. Here's why he's asking. He almost certainly has a boost bet that he's available to place a $5 bet on. That's why he's asking. I'll guarantee it.
I'm going to say Golden State.
I'll go Houston. They're home. Houston's really good this year. I think Golden State's solid as well, but I'm going to go with the Houston side.
Houston's so good defensively with all those guys that can bring in.
Next question, it is from Stan0302. He was also asking us a 2v2 question. And, this is going to be an easy one for me. On one side, Buddy Hield and Mikal Bridges. On the other side, Dyson Daniels and Precious Achiuwa. Hield and Bridges.
Yeah, that's not even close for me either.
I know for the one game slate, I liked Precious Achiuwa, and I got overweight to the field to him as a contrarian option for the showdown slate. And he also did play minutes alongside Karl-Anthony Towns for that game. A little bit, I just find it to be unnecessary when there's a 2-game slate and there's other options for value that I don't think are quite as volatile as Precious Achiuwa. Also, his price tag has gone up a little bit. Nothing too crazy, but it's enough to where he's not somebody I'm all that interested in. Let's see. We got a super chat here from Salah Abdallah. Salah wants to know Eason and Karl-Anthony Towns or Bridges in Şengün for a FanDuel GPP. Give me the Bridges in Şengün side.
Yeah, I think that projection-wise, it's the first side, but I think it's close enough where you can make a pivot and go to the second one if you want to get some ownership leverage.
Lots of ownership savings on Alper and Şengün relative to Karl-Anthony Towns. We've only got about 30 seconds left to go here, Matt. So any final thoughts on the slate? Anything we didn't cover that you want to shout out to the people before we wrap up here?
No, fun slate, fun show. We'll have to wait on this Şengün news. And all I can say is that if you're playing him, I'd probably have some other spots in your lineup where if he's out, you can make pivots.
Yeah, and we are wrapping up. We are live in playback right now, where we're not going to be doing a playback post-lock show. I am throwing the game up on screen. So if you guys do a VIP and you want to watch in there, if you just want to hang out and chat amongst yourselves, go hang out and playback. Jordan, if you wouldn't mind dropping that link in, I did see a couple people request if we could do that. Yeah, so for whatever reason, yesterday we did try to load it up and we just got this spinning circle. The game wouldn't load, but it's loading for today. So if you guys want to go hang out in there, that is an option that is available to you. Other than that, guys, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to be looking out for an update on Alper and Şengün. Don't just leave your lineups and not check them for the rest of the night. Şengün's still questionable play. That is a piece of news that could end up changing. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you guys haven't already. Have a great night. See you back here tomorrow.